Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and shortly Diablo 4. The betas are all done now and with the release imminent, the big question is, what are you going to main, what class will be your first? As that's a tough question, we're currently releasing a full series of videos dedicated to each class, featuring a rundown of their vibe and concept, and the gameplay and types of builds that class makes use of. That information should give you what you need to make your choice on which class might be for you. In today's video though, I'm covering the Rogue, the stealthy assassin that can teleport from place to target, or pull out a bow and blast foes from far. But without any more build up, let's begin the video. Starting with the class fantasy and concept, what is the Rogue? Our Rogue in Diablo 4 is a hyper-mobile fighter who can fight up close or at impressive range, assassinating with dagger and sword, or firing from far with a bow or crossbow. This adaptable warrior can imbue their weapons for a variety of effects, be it poison or shadow, land unique combo attacks, zip around the combat through dashes and target teleportation. It feels like an interesting mix between assassin and demon hunter from the previous games. Their gameplay leads to high risk, high reward, and they're able to survive dire situations thanks to their mobility and stealth, evading what would otherwise be life-ending situations. Will you use your dagger and swords, your stealth, and your hyper-mobile movement to assassinate foes, or will you play tactically, fighting with traps, poison, and elements? Will you become a powerful ranger, clearing targets from afar? Or will you make a use of a mix, becoming the hybrid fighter that is the Diablo 4 Rogue? Now we'll cover the core mechanics of the Rogue, how this all works, and give some examples. As a class then, you should expect a mix of melee and ranged combat, able to switch between the two depending on your setup and preferences. Though you can entirely focus on one aspect, being more of a ranger than anything else, or vice versa if you like. No matter what you do, your class will make use of its primary resource, energy, which it builds through time and specific combat abilities. The Rogue fights using physical damage, yes, but it can also use elements like cold and shadow, as well as poison. The talent tree is how you'll pick and choose which abilities and attacks are going to be in your current arsenal. Here we pick your basic attack, which costs nothing to use and is usually the main method of building resources for all classes. Then our core abilities, which are, as it says in the name, the core of your combat in most cases. This is your bread and butter ability, the thing you'll probably be using as your main damage source and main spender. Then we have the more unique class options, from agility based moves to subterfuge, imbuement, and eventually your ultimate. Each class has a choice of ultimates, 3 or so powerful abilities that can either turn the tide of a fight or massively augment your current abilities. Further, each class has 6 slots of attack. That means you can pick up to 6 abilities to fill your bars, limiting your active options. Each ability can be leveled up to 5 out of 5 times to enhance its power, though you can get it higher through other methods. On top of that, we can enhance abilities to give them new effects entirely. For example, with Shadow Imbuement, we can make our next 2 imbuable skills deal explosive shadow damage. It turns enemies hit by that to shadow, which when killed, explode. We can enhance that to increase our crit chance against those injured and affected by the shadow, then choose between blended or mixed imbuement, meaning either our main explosion makes enemies struck by it vulnerable, or all shadow affected enemies take 12% increased non-physical damage. So that type of choice and other choices of that nature enhance your abilities in a variety of ways, and you pick based on your playstyle and build what you want. So let's take a look at a few ability examples and their descriptions to give you the vibe. For our basic skills, we have 5 options with the Rogue. Invigorating Strike, where we stab an enemy, dealing a certain amount of damage and increase regeneration of energy for 3 seconds. Blade Shift, on the other hand, we do less damage, but then we can shift moving through enemies freely, like a spectral ghost. Great for melee style in a group of enemies. Puncture throws a blade a short distance, like a mini ranged dagger throw, helping control enemies by every 3rd throw, actually slowing the enemy. Heartseeker, on the other hand, fires a single arrow that will seek out an enemy, dealing a certain amount of damage and increasing crit strike chance against them. It stacks more and more as you continuously shoot them, potentially very good in single target. Lastly, Forceful Arrow. Every 3rd shot of that makes enemies vulnerable, which can synergize with other abilities really well. Examples of our core abilities by comparison though are things like Barrage, where you and sort of shadow versions of you shoot out a bunch of arrows in a cone in front of you. Or Rapid Fire, sending 5 arrows in a line really quickly into a target. Penetrating Shot goes straight through the targets, spreading through, and great for corridor AoE clear. Melee wise, we have things like Twisting Blade, which pierces through an enemy and then returns to you after a delay, meaning targeting the enemy at the back of the group and then returning to the other side of the group, that blade will go through an entire pack, which is super satisfying. Or lastly, Flurry, which is absolutely tons of stabs and slashes in a burst moment, dealing great damage in a close cone in front of you. As you can see, there's a variety of melee and range options, and abilities that lean more to AoE or single target depending on your needs. Not everything is a direct ability or ability enhancement though. We have a lot of passive upgrades to consider too. Key passives at the end of the tree, even after ultimates, massively enhance the style of combat, such as marksman skills, giving you the potential to raise your crit to like a 40% rate, or an amazing AoE option in which dealing damage to a vulnerable enemy has a 30% chance to cause an explosion, perfect synergy with that shadow imbuement concept. There are many passives in the tree overall, and they'll all add important changes to your abilities and playstyle. Last up though, we should talk about the unique class mechanic. Each class gets one, and in the case of the rogue, it's specializations. This lets us choose one of 3 active specs, which will empower us in a variety of ways. The first one you get will be combo points, which are generated after basic skills are used, and then when consumed by certain skills, they give them extra effect, basically enhancing the raw power of certain skills you might be using. Secondly, we have inner sight. This marks enemies, which when attacked, fills an inner sight gauge, and when full, it gives you unlimited energy for 4 seconds, meaning you can absolutely spam your strongest attacks for free during that. Lastly, we have preparation, which actually wasn't in the original betas, but it seems to be that every 100 energy you spend reduces your ultimate skills cooldown by 4 seconds, while on the other end, if you use your ultimate, that resets the cooldowns of other skills. So in a pretty standard way, preparation will reduce your ability cooldowns, mainly tied to your ultimates. This could be particularly useful for specific builds, so something to consider. Now, one of the major features of the endgame at level 50 and beyond is the Paragon system, which is just a long-term feature where every time you level again after level 50, you get 4 Paragon points, and you spend them on this massive board of things. Everything we've seen from this is very prone to change, so it is hard to talk about because there's so much of it, but some of the best things I've seen for Rogue are ways to increase your damage and your survivability or your burst potential in sort of passive ways in synergy with other skills. But let's move on and give you a couple build examples for the Rogue so you can imagine how it might go in the full game. As always, anything I outline here is based on the beta experiences, which no doubt will have changed and balanced differently in the full release. When it comes to choosing a build though, in the beta it came down to aspects that you could achieve through equipment known as legendary items. Aspects are an unlockable skill enhancement via specific challenges, and there's universal ones for all classes like gaining certain damage shields, or class specific ones which by unlocking them can be applied to a piece of equipment, altering the very way our abilities work in a powerful way. Some of the strongest aspects though are tied to legendary equipment, which are so strong you can create a whole build and playstyle around it. Let's take imbuement aspects, which could enhance other abilities to also imbue. Our ultimate, Shadow Clone, is a short-lived clone that uses the same abilities we do, but to balance it, it doesn't get the full effect. It's not as strong as us. However, with aspects, we can unlock and improve that and cause the imbuements we use to enhance the clone's damage massively. Through that concept, with that aspect, we absolutely want to use the clone as our ultimate and combine that with an imbuement based build. That could indeed be the Shadow Explosive one we talked about, or it could be the various other imbuement options and the other playstyles they create. Another example would be the hypermobile Shadow Step, which targets an enemy to teleport directly to them, dealing a big burst of damage. With the aspect that enhances that, it can have 2 charges instead of 1, and it'll also refund the charge used if it kills the target, which on top of all of that will then boost the power of following Shadow Steps for 2 seconds every time you successfully do that. Not only allowing for insane movement ability, teleporting to any one target you choose, which if killed leads to sort of an infinite chain of teleporting, killing and getting stronger as you use further Shadow Steps. Imagine that combined with the enhanced Shadow Clone and the explosive imbuement, that could lead to a pile of explosions in no time, creating a very potent AoE clear build. On the other hand, there is of course other aspects that might massively raise energy regen, or cause other abilities to have new effects. One popular option in the betas was this cross-shot version of Penetrating Shot, perfect for a ranger style rogue. Penetrating Shot blasts through targets in a straight line normally, but with an aspect enhancement, it'll shoot out in more of a cross shape, going forward, right and left on impact, spreading the damage much more effectively. As you should be able to tell then, there's many ways that aspects can change the way we play, and when leveling, we'll randomly find these aspects and specific legendaries that will give us new options for builds and playstyles to consider. As you level, you won't have access to everything like you will have at endgame, with all the RNG and specific challenges to unlock specific aspects to work on. Being adaptable then when you find something that does change the build and playstyle you're currently running is probably going to be worth it while leveling, since you won't have access to everything, and that legendary or aspect you found might really alter your gameplay. So, in conclusion, the Rogue in Diablo 4 allows for insanely mobile movement, long or close range up fighting, bursty builds or damage over time, whether you want to play traps and tactical options, or just in your face fighting. How you pick and choose your abilities and their enhancements, and potentially aspects too, will decide how you approach combat entirely. Depending on what you're planning to take on next, you might consider more single target DPS in a build, maybe you want more mobility or range, or maybe just full AoE, it's all up to you. But if these concepts appeal to you, then Rogue might just be the class for you. I hope this quick overview of the class helps you with your choice though. I've tried to keep it to the point without going over into the details, but as always, if you guys have any extra info about rogues that might help someone decide if they want to play it or not, then be sure to drop it in the comments. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and we'll see you at release.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.